Awesome. Thank you, Holly, so much for that overview. You kind of doing a little bit of my job. I was going to do housekeeping in a couple of minutes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're really excited for you all to hear from our special guest, as well as my colleagues, both Jenny Malika and Peter Simon from High Road Alliance. So we're happy that you're all here to join us. As Holly shared earlier, we just wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items. Upon entering the room, you all are muted, but we will maybe towards the end of the session go into a little bit of housekeeping. So you have all been muted upon entry, and we want to maintain a pretty productive conversation. Holly, if you can advance the slide one more, please. Yeah, so in an effort to avoid technical issues, as Holly said earlier, we want to make sure that you're all muted upon entry, so that way we can hear from our guests that we have joining us today and have a really productive conversation. Advance, next slide, please. So you'll also notice in the chat, we have my colleague, Nicole Misley, who will be doing some moderating in the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself, say hello. We definitely want to hear from you and you want to be as engaged as possible. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. But let's transition to talk about how we will spend our time together today. So we'll start off by doing some level setting, by discussing what is apprenticeship, why equitable apprenticeship is so important, and the investments California is making in expanding apprenticeship. We will also transition into a high-level overview of the wonderful toolkit that was created in partnership with High Road Alliance and the Foundation for California Community College. And then we will talk to our host that we have today around the work that they are doing around equitable apprenticeship. So we're really excited to have them join us. We will also have an opportunity to do some Q&A with the audience a little bit later. And then we're going to close out with a few next steps in how you can access the tool, as well as get connected to some of the work that we've been doing around apprenticeship. So we look forward to sharing that information later in the session as well. Next slide, please. So today we have with us my colleague, Nicole Misley, who is our apprenticeship coordinator with the Foundation for California Community Colleges. My name is Chanel Brumfield. I am the senior specialist with the Foundation for California Community Colleges. We have my colleague, Michelle Von Lopez, who is our manager with the Foundation for California Community Colleges. And our small but mighty team makes up the Apprenticeship Support Network team. And we help support through technical assistance the California Community College system, as well as the broader apprenticeship ecosystem. We serve through technical assistance over 100 California Apprenticeship Initiative grantees, as well as over 600 partners and counting in the broader apprenticeship ecosystem through TA activities such as full day convenings, digital convenings similar to this, cohort calls and peer learning circles, our newsletters, as well as data analysis and so much more. We're excited to be joined today by Peter Simon, who's the co-founder of High Road Alliance, and Jenny Malika, co-founder of High Road Alliance as well. And they'll share a little bit more about the work that they've done around equitable apprenticeship, as well as I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves in a second. So we will share some of the work that we've been doing around the apprenticeship ecosystem as we go through the presentation. But with that, I will turn it over to Jenny Malika to kick us off.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here. It's really an honor to present to all of you today. Peter and I have worked together for many years in various roles and just formed High Road Alliance a little over a year ago with a focus on expanding equitable career pathways through strong partnerships, really focused on pathways leading to high quality jobs, and really ensuring access for all Californians. And we believe strongly that the adult education system here has an extremely important role to play in that. We put some focus on apprenticeship because we believe it's a very strong training model. And again, we feel that the role of adult education is so important in this apprenticeship space. So we're delighted to have teamed up with the Apprenticeship Support Network, the Foundation for California Community Colleges. They play an amazing role in providing support and resources to apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs around the state. And we've had some good thought partnership around the development of this Equitable Apprenticeship Toolkit. So we're just delighted to be able to share it with you today. Peter, do you want to say a word before we jump in?
I think that we don't need to go on and on. I think we're just really quite excited to share this with all of you with the adult ed world. And I'll leave it at that. I think we'll just dive right in.
Okay. We have a quick poll on the next slide. And Holly, if you could advance here and bring up the poll. We just wanted to start off today by understanding who's in the room. There are many strong examples in adult education of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. And there are others of you who may have had no experience in this space. So Holly, if you could launch the poll.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the controls up here that will allow me to. Here we go. Here we go.
Sure.
There it is. Okay. Now can they vote on this? Yes.
Yes, they are voting.
Okay.
Actively happening. Great.
I think we
very
seem to be.
helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Would you like me to end it now?
Yeah, I mean, just to glance at this, it looks like we are quite a mix in the audience, and this is it's great just to know who we are, and we bring a whole range of experience. So thanks, Holly. You can close that now. And I think we'll go on to the next slide. To go over just the objectives of today. We really want to make sure that we begin with some emphasis on the potential role of adult education in California's expansion of apprenticeships. So we're going to give a little context. Chanel and her team are very well versed in all that's going on in California right now to support the expansion of apprenticeships. And we're also going to speak to then what is the role of adult education in that. Following that, we're going to lead into this overview of the toolkit and ways it can be used by an apprenticeship team. And then that's going to segue into hearing from panelists how they've identified and addressed issues of equity in apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. And they have a rich range of experiences themselves to share with you. And then we want to make sure we leave time for questions and discussion at the end. Next slide, Holly.
Okay, well, under the rubric of just expanding apprenticeship in California and the role of adult ed, I think if you go to the next slide, please. We just want to start with just a very bare bones definition of apprenticeship. And I think maybe all of you know this, but we'll just so we're all on the same page, that by definition, an apprenticeship is fundamentally an earn while you learn model. And an apprenticeship implies that you were working, if not all the way, almost full time in your targeted occupation. It's a structured and very regulated pathway, which mixes classroom instruction with hands-on, on-the-job training. And it leads toward an industry recognized or union recognized both certificate or credential. And importantly, it's very much a formalized partnership between employers, labor, education, and government. And we don't have a slide here, but we're also going to be talking about pre-apprenticeship. And just very quickly, a pre-apprenticeship, which is very relevant to our discussion today, is it can take different forms, a form of scaffolding and preparing people to be successfully enter into an apprenticeship. A registered pre-apprenticeship, or one that is formally linked. In other words, if you complete a registered pre-apprenticeship, you have access immediately into the apprenticeship. So there's different kinds of pre-apprenticeship programs. Next slide, please. Now, who is this? Chanel, were you going to speak to this, or are we?
This was actually Jenny.
Okay.
So, so just to kind of frame the situation in California right now, the governor announced a while back the goal of having 500,000 active apprentices in California by 2029, which represents a huge increase over what we have now, which is currently much closer to 50,000. If I still have those numbers current. What we're emphasizing here today is that to reach those goals will require opening the doors to apprenticeship for a much more diverse group of participants, a much broader group, and that should lead to a diverse workforce as well, and real opportunities for Californians to achieve the good quality jobs that apprenticeships can lead to through this earn and learn model. What we also think at this moment in time about the post-pandemic economic recovery, the need right now that's especially great for upskilling, for adapting to changes in the labor market, and certainly to reemployment, and recognizing, and we left it out of this presentation, we put it in others, the data showing the inequitable distribution of the impact of the pandemic on our communities really calls for an emphasis on equity in investments in the training and employment opportunities that we support coming out of it. Mm-hmm. So as an opportunity to address historic marginalization of certain California populations, and to seize this opportunity to have a more equitable recovery, apprenticeship presents itself as a huge opportunity with a lot of support at the state level. Next slide.
Thank you, Jenny. And tying into where we're at as far as pandemic and thinking about the investment in apprenticeship, what we've seen over the past few years is a significant investment from multiple sources. So on the screen, you'll notice just a few. This list is by no means exhaustive, but one funding stream is the California Apprenticeship Initiative, which is Prop 98 funding, and it's administered through the Chancellor's office. So I would say over the past 5 years, there's been over $75 million invested in the California Apprenticeship Initiative. And there's actually a current RFP that's out right now for pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, and enhanced OJT through that bucket of funding. Additionally, we've seen federal funding from the U.S. Department of Labor through the AAI grants to help support the expansion of apprenticeship. Also, there is SNAP ENT funding that now can help support some training aspects of workforce training programs, and also philanthropic funding from foundations such as Irvine towards really getting the economy and getting people back to work. Through the past couple of years, we've seen definitely a significant investment in earn and learn strategies, and really focusing on developing programs that connect theoretical learning to actual hands-on, on-the-job training. So we'll share a little bit more about some of those investments later in the session, but we just wanted to share a few that come to top of mind and give you a sense of the fact that apprenticeship is starting to be in the forefront as far as a really strong work-based learning strategy that gets folks skilled and connected to career pathways with livable and sustainable wages. Next slide, please. And I will pass it back to you, Jenny.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that overview, Chanel. It's clear there are resources in California right now, and those resources don't need to only go towards supporting the core classroom training. They can go towards so many different needs that can be addressed in a really comprehensive apprenticeship program. And one of the ways we think of that is that programs need to be addressing barriers that could prevent some Californians, some workers from taking advantage of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship program. And so how can we address those barriers? How can we identify and address barriers to individuals accessing these programs, being accepted into them, being integrated into them, and growing in their careers through these programs. And so we looked at developing this toolkit at how an equity lens could be applied to really every aspect of program planning, the design, everything start to finish, not simply an outreach strategy, for example. And it's this intentionality that we really tried to promote through the toolkit, with the belief that it's with intentionality that we can really create a more level playing field in this apprenticeship space. Next slide, please.
Okay, I think this, so how is this all relevant to adult educators? And we think it is quite relevant, you know, both in terms of just presenting these opportunities. Again, the moment that we're in with the post-pandemic recovery, with a record number of people unemployed. And I think we all know, if we work in adult ed, that the people most impacted by the pandemic and the unemployment are people who fit the profile of adult ed students, and many of them are your students. I can't emphasize enough the next point, which is, it's not just about, we're not going to just be talking about you starting apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship, but how a lot of the toolkit addresses how you partner with others in the community and industry. And the adult education folks have a tremendously important role to play as partners in developing these programs. You'll see when we get into the toolkit that there are sections specifically designated to help you design pre-apprenticeship, and questions you need to ask and resources you need to gather. But also pre-apprenticeship is one of the program areas designated in AB 104 that funds CAPE. And we are approached all the time by people saying, we'd really love to start a pre-apprenticeship, but we're really not quite sure where to start. Well, we're really hoping that this toolkit will be a valuable resource in figuring out how to proceed, because we've really gotten down to the nuts and bolts questions, issues, resources you'll need to get going. And importantly, in terms of access and scaffolding for people to get into pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, the whole approach of integrated education and training, of linking ESL, basic skills, and importantly, high school completion to career training, that's a key role of adult education. Next slide. So.
Thanks, Peter. I love to hear that shout out to adult ed, and it's appropriate as we launch into this overview of the toolkit. And just want to remind people that not only these slides, but the PDF of the toolkit, as well as an accompanying workbook that's a Word document, are available through the CAPE Summit agenda. You can click there to access the Google folder that holds all those. So we hope you'll do that. They're also available on the California Apprenticeship Initiative website of the Apprenticeship Support Network, and we're going to be sharing that link in the presentation today. So with that, let's jump in. I'd like to see the next slide, Holly. This slide shares with you a framework that is really at the heart of the approach to the Equitable Apprenticeship Toolkit. You'll see tools that touch on each of these 5 little areas that are around the circle here. The toolkit, the framework, it's intentionally a circle because we see it as a process of sort of continuously looking at an apprenticeship program and all that is around it, at sort of looking holistically, not just at outreach and recruitment, not just at the pre-apprenticeship that might be built, not just at the apprenticeship itself, but kind of the every aspect of creating, building and supporting and growing and improving an apprenticeship program. So that's what we try to represent here. And then in the center, you see the apprenticeship itself, and really not just, it seems sort of funny to say it this way, but not just any apprenticeship, but an apprenticeship that truly could be described as equitable, as well as industry-driven, worker-centered, and community-oriented. So being able to really say that there's been intentionality behind creating it in that way. And if you go to the next slide, Holly, there are just a few points here. I think we wanted to emphasize that the toolkit then, by addressing the 5 areas around this framework, guides an approach to identifying and addressing issues of equity in every aspect of the apprenticeship program. And each of these areas is an opportunity for your team to focus on ways of addressing issues and making a difference. So the toolkit is designed for use by a team that's already engaged either in creating or improving on an apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program, and going through a process of identifying issues, identifying solutions, trying things out, learning what works. So creating that kind of cycle. I see a question. I'm not seeing the toolkit in the Summit resource area. Is it there now or will it be later? I clicked on it yesterday, so I believe it's there. If you go to the agenda, Anthony, I think you'll find it there, but we'll make sure you get the link. Maybe we could even paste now the link to the to it in the chat box there, because I think people will be curious to see it. We can go on to the next slide though.
Right. So I think we've covered some of this, but just to reiterate, that our idea here is the toolkits at all stages, and it's not a okay, we finished that stage, now we'll move on to the next stage. I think the classic example is existing programs that continue to get additional outcome data can use that data, and when you start looking at our information gathering tools and say, okay, how are we really doing? Are we really meeting our objectives or not? And that can help refine other things you need to do. And again, the toolkit is designed to be used by a team of partners, not one entity, not just an adult school, but an adult school working with an array of partners. And it's the fundamental sort of rubric of this toolkit is that information gathering informs action planning. But again, it's a circle, and you take action, you reflect, you get more data, you refine your action. So if we go to the next slide, we'll actually get into, this is a quick snapshot of the 14 tools that are in the toolkit. I'm not going to read this list to you, but you can see just reading this, how we've approached this. And in a way, they're sequential, but it may be that certain tools are going to be more valuable into where you are. You don't necessarily have to go 1, 2, 3 and work your way through. We do think that the information gathering tools, if you're getting started, are where you're going to start. But it's also as you're forming partnerships as well. I want to just say, then if we could go to the next. So there are certain common elements in these tools. So it's not just, filling out boxes, but we start out each information gathering tool with a guiding question, and we'll give you an example of this in just a minute. But then we also then go, before we dive in, we say, here's some things to really think about in this area, okay? And in each tool, we have a separate section just to make sure that we stay focused. We're calling a key equity perspective on this particular aspect. In all of our tools, you'll see when you get into the toolkit is filled with hyperlinks, and we've linked. This is where it wasn't just Jenny and I, it's Jenny and I working with a whole constellation of partners and people who are experts in different areas. And they've all contributed different resources that we put into this toolkit. So each tool has both resources, and some of the links are examples of people who've done really good work in this particular area, and we're calling it examples for inspiration. Each tool has a table in the toolkit this will be in PDF or online, but there's also, you'll see when you get into the resource, there's a companion, as Jenny mentioned, in Microsoft Word. We're calling it the workbook. We consciously did it in Word so that you could both customize that table to your specific needs, and you can easily populate and share it. And then each tool closes with a reflection question of things to furtherly ask after you've done the information gathering. Next slide. The action planning tools are similar, but they look a little bit different. And instead of a guiding question, we start out with a definition of a problem to address. Again, things to consider. And then opportunity, what are the opportunities to address specific inequalities or barriers? Again, examples for inspiration and reflection for action. And then we have, you'll see when you get into it, what we call action planning tables, which breaks down this, what you're going to do. And I think you're probably all familiar with this kind of format, what you're going to do, who's going to do it, by when, okay? And then closing again with reflection questions. Next slide, please.
Thanks for that overview, Peter. I think this is an attempt to describe something which hopefully you'll be able to
You'll see.
Pick up a copy of and look
see.
over.
Yeah.
Where you will be able to access it there. Thanks for figuring that out for us, Anthony. It's actually in the agenda area of the website. But I also see, I'm appreciating Diane's question in the chat box, and encourage any of you to enter questions. We're really happy to answer those as they go along. But the question about how these tools could help a regional effort to bring about more equitable access to apprenticeship programs. And I think you can begin to see, as you look at this list of tools, how regional partners involved in programs could come together and say, well, let's do some information gathering. Let's see, does the participation in our apprenticeship programs and our pre-apprenticeships really reflect the demographics of the community? And do the workplaces that we're placing people in, are they really reflecting the demographics of the community? And what are the entry requirements for our apprenticeships? And are those really equitable? Are they shutting anyone out in ways that are not necessary? Are there ways we could address that? What are the conditions like that might support some really thoughtful ways of addressing these inequities? And then using the action planning tools as that regional team to start to sort of tackle some of these things, to say, well, what would it look like to provide different support services? What would it look like to shape a pre-apprenticeship? What would it look like to restructure our entry requirements a little bit? So hopefully we can bring that alive for you with this little example. We have a slide here now as we're going to walk you through some elements of this action planning tool. This is kind of deep in the toolkit. It's on page 40, I think. Hopefully at this point, your group would have done some of that, looking at data on the community, on the apprenticeship program, or on the employment in the sector, and have decided, you know, I think we're ready to make some changes to our apprenticeship program, either the classroom training or the on-the-job training. And we're ready to look at this problem definition statement. So what are the inequities or barriers to retention and success in the program that we've identified that we could address in some way? And let's embark on that. So beginning with defining the problem and being clear as a group what those inequities are that you're setting out to address. And then on the next slide, I'm going to kind of quickly go through some elements of what you'll find in the toolkit if you navigate through it to this action planning tool number 6. I think I was going to go over this one too. Okay, so what you see here is just a piece of the table that we include with links to resources. So if one of the issues identified by your team is that there are many members of the community who just are shut out of this program because it requires a certain level of English or a certain level of math, or in many cases, the apprenticeship requires a high school diploma. What can we do about that if we want to serve these community members? Well, here are just a number of links and resources that you might want to explore as a team or as a leader of this effort that could inform your work. Next slide.
So we in each section, we really try and include some examples of here are some folks who are doing this work pretty well. And in this case, this is a hospitality training academy down in Los Angeles in the culinary sector. And they, in fact, are partnering actively with an adult school to provide adult ed students using an integrated education approach, co-teaching, to really provide those basic academic and soft skills to get ready and to actually earn industry recognized credentials even in their pre-apprenticeship, and it leads to really good unionized jobs in the culinary sector. And the other one is an example, which I think a number of you are probably in that kind of environment, which uses in this case, a bilingual classroom with their apprenticeship, because they're working in a primarily Spanish-speaking environment, which there's many examples of that as well. Next slide, please. So, so this is, again, if someone in the example we're using, and let's say that they've narrowed it down to addressing those barriers, then these might be some of the questions that they would kind of whittle it down to a reflection on what they need to do, which is which of these opportunities best address the barriers and inequalities we've identified, which of these opportunities will we pursue, and what partnerships do we need to have in place? I mean, that's a lot of work there. 1, 2, and 3, that's enough. Hopefully this gives you just a little glimpse. I think that you will find when you, after this session, pick up the toolkit or access it online, that we've really tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. So that was our goal, and we're certainly going to refine it as we go, but we put a great deal of effort and had lots of people look at this to say, does this work? And so we've made a lot of changes from when we first started doing this. So hopefully this gives you a little glimpse into how you use this toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, we want to shift gears. And
Peter, there's a question in the chat box, actually. I'm super excited to launch into this panel, but Ivan poses a really important question in the chat box. I thought maybe we could sort of touch on that and then jump into the panel. Although actually our panelists might have some thoughts on this one as well. So Ivan poses what he calls a real equity related question, which is, have any apprenticeship programs about found creative ways of involving undocumented students in apprenticeship programs? And this is a question we've heard again and again. It's a really important one. It's important for California. I think one thing that strikes me that's different about apprenticeships compared to many job training programs is that the apprenticeship is a job. So it depends on that employer's ability, willingness, openness to hire an undocumented student. There certainly are many examples of pre-apprenticeship programs, adult education programs that are preparatory, that can work with someone on building skills they'll need for a future work opportunity, or even building toward work authorization. But what distinguishes the apprenticeship is that there needs to be an employer there ready to hire that person for them to become an apprentice. And that's certainly one of the challenges in working with undocumented students. I don't know. I know there are probably others on this call who have grappled with this same question, and maybe it can come up in our panel. Peter, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I think you did a good job. It's a huge question in terms of who are adult ed students in California. A large number of them are undocumented students. So that's always kind of the huge question in the room. I do think that with our panelists, we've chosen these panelists because from different angles, they are actually putting into practice a lot of what we're talking about. Even if they're not yet using the toolkit, I think they exemplify approaching pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship with a lens toward equitable access, and also partnering with adult ed institutions to make that happen. So we're really excited about hearing from the panelists. We will have time as we go, and at the end for you to interact with the panelists. We really have tried to leave enough time for a dialogue here. So I'm just going to ask the panelists, can you go to the next slide, please? To introduce themselves. We might as well go in the order here. Holly, could you start? And I'd like the panelists, when you introduce yourself, to just introduce yourself and your pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship program, and specifically how you focused any needs that have been addressed around equity issues. Please, Holly.
Sure. Thank you, Peter. I'm Holly Correa. I'm Program Director in the Ventura County Community College District. And we have a couple different apprenticeship projects. One of them I can share. We're going with the first question, Peter. Would you like me to? Okay.
How you going to introduce your program?
Okay, so we have an agriculture supervisory leadership program, and Ventura County has an enormous ag industry and really committed growers and organizations like the Farm Bureau, the Farm Worker Resource Guide group, and we also have a miracle group that a lot of the industry came together to form this coalition, because it really came from an unfavorable survey that was taken probably in about 2015 or 2016. They interviewed, an outside agency interviewed a lot of agriculture employees. And when the results came out, everybody was concerned because they were not reflective of how the ag employers felt that they were doing. And so it really became like a cause for conversation, and really they broke it way down and discovered that most of the what would be perceived as negative kind of feedback was centered around communication or lack of that. So the Miracle Group took the initiative and came up with a program to address not just the ag employers kind of concerns that were arising, but also the employees. And so they came together and they formed an opportunity for employers to participate in an agriculture supervisory leadership. So frontline workers who are the middleman between their employer or supervisor and actually the ag employees who are working in the fields or running the farms. So it was intended to be a supportive piece, so that the frontline supervisor would not just have information on important things like pesticide management or water treatment and those types of things that are issues that come up in the field, but they also wanted to address employees' concerns about whether they had questions on their payroll or family leave, insurance, liability. There were so many things that were not getting communicated throughout that process. So initially it started in contract education, and the growers paid for this education program, and it was founded at Ventura College. And since then, we've been fortunate enough to work with people like Chanel and everyone at the foundation in our CHI initiative, and we received funding to develop this apprenticeship program. So it's really a pre-apprenticeship, hoping to move it in that direction. But we've done a lot of work around, it is taught in bilingual instruction. We've marketed it to Mixteco, which is just a spoken language. It's not a written language. So we had developed videos and marketing endeavors to really try to address some of this equity gaps that we saw. I hope I'm not talking too much, but at any rate, that's one of our, it's just a real beautiful program and an experience that's making a very positive impact in Ventura County.
Thanks. We'll give you a chance to talk about it some more.
Sorry.
downstream.
It's a great overview.
I get overly
Yeah,
excited.
No, that's why you're on the panel, Holly. We love your excitement. Matthew, could you say a bit about your program, yourself, and how you're identified issues of equity that need to be addressed?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here this afternoon. Yeah, my name is Matthew Overlander. As it says on the slide, I'm the coordinator of curriculum and instruction for the Division of Adult and Career Education, which is part of LA Unified. And we were asked to think about sort of the origin story of our programs. And so, long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away, we at LAUSD, we have been the lead educational agency for apprenticeship programs throughout California for decades. So we have about 40 apprenticeship program sponsors. But more recently, we really have kind of focused on 4 main elements of our program and 2 key shifts that have guided our efforts to align apprenticeship programs with our equity mission. So those 4 key elements are our apprenticeship programs, our pre-apprenticeship program, our CTE program, and our integrated education and training program, or IET. And then the 2 key shifts have been around culture, which is very powerful and sometimes difficult to shift, and structural, meaning where are there gaps and what pieces do we need to create to fill those gaps. So just in a nutshell, our apprenticeship programs, like I mentioned, have been around a long time. We have a lot of partners. We really have been recently working to shift the culture in our apprenticeship programs so that there is more of a value on these equity ideas and more of an equity lens applied to decision making, as Jenny and Peter mentioned. For pre-apprenticeship, we've really created a program that is focused specifically on serving underserved populations. It's built around the multi-craft core curriculum, or MC3, which is developed and approved by the building trades. And we recruit specifically from certain underserved communities based on demographics and based on socioeconomic status. And then our CTE program, we've developed a new course, which is called Construction Essentials, which is very short-term, very basic, and really is a preview for our MC3 pre-apprenticeship class. Again, the pre-apprenticeship program, this new CTE course, they're about creating new access points. Like Jenny said, we really want to have as many access points as possible. And then finally, we have an integrated education and training program, which provides an access point specifically for English learners. And we've designed those courses to be co-taught with the CTE teacher and ESL teacher in the classroom at the same time. And one example of our IET program was mentioned earlier, which is our partnership with Hospitality Training Academy.
That's you guys. Great.
That's us, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. And Will, please.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Will Scott, the Apprenticeship Program Administrator for the BYD-SMART Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee. For those of you who don't know, BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams, is the largest manufacturer of electric vehicles in the world. So it's a Chinese-based company who opened up a manufacturing plant for their electric buses and batteries in the city of Lancaster, California, I believe back in 2014. They came here non-union, was really working with an immigrant workforce of Chinese nationals with visas. And word got back that working conditions weren't very good in the plant, and so the unions decided to step up and try to organize the plant. And my union, the Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers Union, was kind of chosen out of the group of unions to try to organize this manufacturing plant. I'm out of Local 105 here in Glendora, California. So we went on aggressive organizing campaign with a coalition of community-based organizations. Jobs to Move America led that coalition. So between our local union and the coalition of CBOs, we were able to organize that plant and get a contract. Along with that contract came a community workforce agreement, which BYD had pledged to, do certain percentages of hiring from underserved communities out there in the Antelope Valley, formerly incarcerated transitional youth from out of foster care. Sorry about that. And some other underserved populations. So we organized the plant, and then they decided to start an apprenticeship program. So we've been running this apprenticeship program for the last 3 years. And we recently have just started a pre-apprenticeship program to kind of address some of those equity issues and make sure that people are getting opportunities to great careers there at the plant and getting in line in the pipeline for unionized careers in the manufacturing industry.
Terrific, thanks. Jenny, do you want to ask the next question?
Well, yeah, I mean, I love that the work you're doing is already sort of incorporating pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships. We could come at this from so many different angles, learning about the work you've been doing. I think our next question was, what progress have you made in addressing equity issues? And I think many of you, or the three of you, touched on that in some ways in your first response. So I might tweak that question just a little bit to say, what progress have you made? And then what are the opportunities you see to address equity issues in the future? Because I think that's one of the things that that we're looking at. And so if we could ask you to sort of talk about equity in the context of your programs, whether you want to focus on past or future in the context of your program, that would be great. Maybe we can go back to you, Holly.
And if I could just inject for a second, if you have some, examples that can speak to the adult education office group here with us now, I think that will be built in, but I just want to highlight that.
Mm-hmm.
Please, Holly.
Okay, sure. Well, it's funny, a few pre-pandemic Cape Summit, I sat in on a presentation where they mentioned 92 or 94% of adult learners have access to a smartphone. And that's one of those things that really resonated with me. And part of our pre-apprenticeship for our ag supervisory actually addresses digital literacy. And I think that divide has become very apparent with our pandemic that we've all experienced. And so a lot of our curriculum kind of shifted. We were teaching, how to get an email, how to send and receive email, all of those things that are communication pieces that are helpful to adult learners. I know that so many of you guys on this webinar are very familiar because your ESL teachers do that all the time. But I feel like that's an area that we've been really mindful of, because not everybody does have access to technology, nor do they have the skills. So we keep trying to address that. And then there was another area. Oh yeah, so we also have been fortunate enough to build out a pre-apprenticeship and an apprenticeship in CNC manufacturing. But while we were doing that, we noticed that our students, who are very busy, as you all know, don't have a lot of extra time to get assistance with things like soft skills. They refer to a resume writing, interview strategies, and communication techniques. So what we did was we worked with our career center at the college, and we actually kind of pushed in that element into our pre-apprenticeship course. so that while they were learning manufacturing, they were also having an opportunity in time, in class. So they didn't have to make an extra appointment or come back to campus if it was too difficult. And we really kind of knocked those things out during their regular study time. And we found that to be extremely helpful. And we also did bring employers who are ready to hire people in right at the end of the class to have an opportunity for actual real interviews. So that was one thing that you know, we tried to really meet the needs of the students who don't always have access to, you know, those wraparound services, because they do take energy, time, and you know, additional resources on their part. So those are two things that I can think of that we continue to work on.
Great. Matthew.
Thank you. In terms of where we've seen the most success, I just want to expand a little bit on that pre-apprenticeship program that's designed around the multi-craft core curriculum. I wanted to also mention that it was done in partnership with the LA Orange County Building Trades Council. And I would just really emphasize that partnerships are really key in all of these different attempts and efforts to kind of you know, advance equity and enhance these programs. It also is funded through the High Roads Training Partnerships Program, which is kind of a set of state funding that's specifically designed, you know, to create access points essentially for underserved community members. So I think those are really key parts of the design of that program. And one of the other things is we really are trying to think about it through a different lens, meaning we want to try to help everyone who's part of that program value diversity, value non-traditional perspectives, and value bilingualism as assets for employees, as things that you really want to have on a team, want to invest in. So that's been an important part of it too. In terms of the future, it seems like there are maybe three things that have helped in the past and may help in the future. One, like I've mentioned a few times, is just, you know, cultural focus on shifting culture and on values in an agency, and in very places like apprenticeship, spaces like apprenticeship, where the values are very traditional historically, and have you know, can sometimes require time in terms of change. One of the things that we've done is we've, you know, partnered with CalPro, which is the state professional development agency, to do equity training for all of our staff. We also have at our district, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. We have racial justice training, and all of that has been kind of connected to what we're doing in apprenticeship, so that we can all share the equity perspective that was talked about before. And that's really important because you sometimes have to go above and beyond when you're making changes. You have to put in a little bit of extra time, you have to expend more resources. And sometimes when you feel like you're doing it for a purpose that aligns with your values, it can be very, very powerful. So values and culture, I think, are important in terms of the future. And then partnerships, like I mentioned, are really, really critical. Having trade unions as partners is key, even if you are not an apprenticeship program, but you are just a CTE program that someday wants to evolve into apprenticeship program, or you're an IET program. That's a great thing to have. And then partnering with training providers, like we did with Hospitality Training Academy, that's very important. And then just those partnerships between, for example, CTE teachers and ESL teachers, which are formed through IET, can really set the stage for a change in the way English learners are viewed when they reach the CTE program, or when they reach apprenticeship programs. And then the last one, which is you know, not something we love to talk about in public, is, you know, funding, money, resources. Those really are helpful. So like the High Roads Training Partnerships, anytime the state can really promote and support these efforts with funding is really appreciated, and really goes a long way, because there's a lot of design work that has to happen, a lot of curriculum development that might have to happen, a lot of PD that might have to happen. And if you're doing IET, you're doing 2 teachers at once. So the cost is a little bit more per student in some ways. So those are some thoughts in terms of the future.
Great, thanks. Will, turn it over to you.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of sit in a little bit of a different wheelhouse when it comes to, the adult education world. Us as an apprenticeship program, established apprenticeship program, we have those entry requirements, it's application requirements, and we have some testing that we do after people have gone through their application process. And keep in mind, we have a single employer, and it's a very large employer. That plant employs, when we first got started, they were up to 800 workers in that plant. And so, the need for the apprenticeship program actually came about because this plant's sitting in the area that it is. Unfortunately, it's an economically depressed area where there just wasn't a very large population of high-skilled workers. And so once we organized the plant and the plant started to grow and they started bringing on new workers, there was a lot of turnover. People in the region, a lot of them who were applying actually just didn't have employable skills. They didn't have the soft skills, I don't know, to maintain employment, let alone the hard skills. So the apprenticeship program, we came together, the labor union, the plant, and we formed a partnership with Antelope Valley College in the region, and talked to the Department of Apprenticeship Standards and decided to put together this advanced manufacturing apprenticeship program designed to bring in entry-level workers into the program and upskill them to a level that the plant could take it from there and give them some journeyman level skills. We ran into a lot of challenges actually formulating the program because of the dynamics of the plant and the way it was broken up with the different departments. Different skill sets were required for different jobs. But at a very basic level, we had to decide what were going to be the entry requirements into the program. And we had to look at it from an equity lens perspective. The population there, demographics in the plant, from the community workforce agreement that was created. Thankfully, it's a very diverse workforce there at the plant, racially, very diverse. So knowing that we had a high population of bilingual Spanish speakers, and that a large part of the workforce weren't highly educated. They didn't have advanced degrees. The plant at the time didn't require a high school diploma or GED to get hired. So we had to design the entry requirements at a level that where we wouldn't keep people out. Now, before this job here with BYD, I was the administrator for our sheet metal construction apprenticeship program located in Bakersfield, California, where the entry requirements to enter that program were quite high. You had to have a high school diploma or GED, and the testing requirements was very high. And some will say that, it was quite restrictive. And so while we're working on that, we've learned our lessons here in this environment for manufacturing in Lancaster. We decided to keep those requirements low. Now, with keeping those requirements low, in accepting practically anyone who's willing to fill out an application. We do have a test, but it's not a pass or fail test. So we just kind of want to judge where they are as far as their skills, and then we bring them into the program and start training them from there. Again, quite a few challenges that we found. We had some ESL challenges. We had some older incumbent workers who was challenged with technology. Our program is a hybrid program, so it's taught. Actually, our curriculum is delivered through internet. So it's an internet-based curriculum. And so we had a few challenges, and with our partner, Antelope Valley College, which I couldn't think of a greater asset for us. They bent over backwards to offer supportive services for our students, offered to put them through basic computer classes for those apprentices who needed, that type of training, because, our instructor was spending quite a bit of time trying to deal with those apprentices in class who had technology challenges. And the same thing with our ESL students, those who were challenged with, having a language barrier. Luckily, we hired an instructor who was bilingual, and he was able to take on the language challenge that we had in the classroom. But Antelope Valley College now has offered us an assistant bilingual instructor to help teach with him, so that his time isn't divided up, and we keep the class on track. Those are just a couple of the issues that we've encountered getting the apprenticeship program up and running, and some of the solutions that we've taken on.
Great. I'm thinking maybe sort of building on what Will said, and we don't have to mechanically go back and forth, but I think it's always good to hear of, even with the best of intentions, you run into many challenges, as you just mentioned, Will. And I'm just wondering if Holly or Matthew, you want to talk about what are some bumps in the road you've hit, and I think what can we all learn from how you address them? Matthew, I see you pondering. You have what could you share with us?
I thought that
We
could
promise
buy
not
myself
to
some time by
we
pondering,
promise
yeah.
not to tell anybody, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think a couple of things that come to mind. One is, I think we were overly ambitious at first, especially with trying to create those connections between IET, CTE, pre-apprenticeship, and apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
What I would recommend to anyone who is kind of starting that process is to really just start with one. Start with one where you have a partner, like a trade union or an employer partner, and build from there. We tried to do several at the same time, and some of them succeeded and some were not as successful. So start small and focus on having those partnerships, which are really valuable. For me, the other thing that was a little bit of a challenge is that I think developing and maintaining partnerships takes a lot of time and sometimes requires a lot of effort and resources. And so, you have to kind of keep that in mind. And for us, we had to sort of hire people that were kind of like navigators that could maybe focus on some of those relationships and take care of maintaining the communication flow between certain partners. And then just since you said this will stay between all of us, I mean, our district is very large. And so creating a partnership agreement, a formal partnership agreement, takes a lot of time and can be very complex when you have general counsel from our big district and general counsel from, a different partner getting together and working through, contract details, revenue agreement details and stuff like that. We were able to do it. It just took a lot of time and resources. And that's where really that culture piece came into play, because a lot of my team had to put in a lot of extra hours to make these things happen, but they really believed in them very deeply because they believe in advancing equity and supporting this work. So those are a few things. And then someone mentioned it in the chat, and I think this is one of the, perennial questions that we try to answer is, for undocumented students, undocumented members of the community who are part of our programs. And that's, to be honest, the majority of our ESL students probably would fall in that category. What are the options that those students would have? At what part of that, those 4 elements I mentioned, can they be included? At which parts, will their not having right to work become, a question or a barrier? And then the other thing is really when you're meeting with and counseling students that fall into that category, being very open and honest about the pathway and about some of those challenges, so that a person doesn't have this expectation that I'm starting an IET with the goal of joining this apprenticeship at this point, and not getting that information early on, that if you're going to do that, you have to take into consideration some of these other aspects of your identity or of your status. So yeah, those are a few that come to mind. And I'll go back to stroking my chin.
Holly,
You, Matthew.
what
Sure.
comes to
I have one thing we're very fortunate that we had our CHI funding. However, to ensure access for future students, sustainability became a really big priority for us. And thankfully, we've worked with faculty to move these pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships into non-credit bearing programs. And then our apprenticeship is moving also into credit bearing. So I think now that we've been able to accomplish that, because it takes a lot of time at the state level for curriculum to be approved, I feel like that's a really great thing, because now if when our CHI funding has ended, we have a mechanism to continue. Matthew has mentioned the funding is tricky. So now we'll have FTES generation for our colleges, but what's most important about that is we're poised to partner with our adult schools in our consortium, who are just absolutely doing amazing things. But from a community college perspective, being a part of the consortium in adult ed, it's a kind of a delicate balance, because it takes a lot of time to really lay the foundation so that you can truly be that partner, for the future. And I'm excited about the position that we're at. I'm very grateful to the foundation. Chanel's been amazing. She's been leading webinars for, oh my goodness, years, right, Chanel? I can't even remember before COVID, but just the work everybody's doing is super important. And I think the more we keep equity at the forefront of all our decision making, the more we're going to serve a broader constituency of students. So.
Great. Thanks so much. That's so exciting to hear, Holly, how you were able to move from that contract ed, which can be as flexible as needed around the employer's needs and all that, but then be able to move it into non-credit and credit. That's really possibly an example there for others that you were able to do that. And I'm noting that, Matthew, you shared some advice for people who might be just starting this work or watching this thinking, well, maybe we could venture into our first pre-apprenticeship effort. I wonder for the others of you, Will and Holly, if you want to share any advice that you would give to someone who is just starting this work in pre-apprenticeship or an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Will, do you have thoughts on that one?
Sure. I did see a question in the chat where someone referenced the governor's enthusiasm or his goal for increasing the apprentice numbers in the state, and was wondering if the unions were just excited as the governor were working towards those same goals. And I would have to say, yes, most definitely. And from my side of the table, I have a program to run, and everybody's knocking on the door. We're getting applicants just people by just driving by. I mean, the waiting list to get into some of these programs are stretched out for years. Okay, and so my advice for, you know, adult ed programs is that you really have to get out there. You really have to network, because we can only get out there so much. As a matter of fact, there's so many adult ed programs out there. I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't know who's running an adult ed program, right? For me to do my outreach. We have some set partners that we return to again and again, year after year. But, you know, I would welcome any adult ed program that came knock on the door and asked me, you know, what were the minimum requirements to get to the program, and what do you need to be doing to make sure the people going through your program are ready for success to get into my program, right? So my advice is that if you have the resources, if you have the person, you got to get an outreach coordinator out there to start building some relationships with these union programs, and do it one at a time. Like Matthew said, I mean, don't try to build a program that's going to try to satisfy all the entry requirements for, you know, 50 different programs. Build a solid relationship with one program, you know, and once you got your curriculum and your structure there where you're seeing some success, and then bring on another program, right? So just get out there, because yes, the unions are desperately looking for partners and more pathways, more avenues to bring people in. And to make our programs more diverse and equitable.
I just want to emphasize something that you just said, Will, which, having done a lot of programs between community colleges and union programs, there's a lot of people who maybe aren't familiar with unions, and that's a lot of folks. Just what Will just said is that they're eager for you to get in touch with them, which runs counter to a lot of people's fears of like, oh my gosh, how do we contact a union? And I'd encourage you, if you see an industry where you think might fit for your students, or you want to talk, just pick up the phone and call them or email them. That people are actually quite eager to partner with you. I just want to make a pitch for that specifically. We have a lot of questions coming in also in the chat. How much time do we have? We have 15 more minutes.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to some of the questions, Jenny? Maybe we could.
Yeah.
There's that one from Beth Cutter. Did you see that
Yes,
one?
that's what I was looking at. Go for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Do you want to read that out? Beth
Sure.
asked here, what marketing strategies are being used to do targeted outreach to underrepresented groups? What have the panelists found to be successful? Anyone have a thought on that?
I think I did mention our ag supervisory leadership. We have a really large population of Mixteco indigenous community. And so we partnered with MyCop, which is Mixteco Indigenous Communities of Practice. And they're a great local organization that has helped us with translating everything into speaking languages for their people. So they go out and visit with employers and get out and speak to the employees about the programs for us. We do also, we used up some of our money to create the video series, and we have them in English, Spanish, and then Mixteco spoken, so that, you know, hopefully we reach a broader net, cast a broader net that way.
Great.
Other thoughts?
Thanks for the question, Beth. Anyone else have thoughts on that question?
Just real quick, just to double down on you guys outreaching to us. I partner with a lot of different organizations, a lot of them pre-apprenticeship programs and community-based organizations. And I can tell you that every single one of those that I partner with, they came knocking on my door. And so I facilitate tours with our training center. I have my instructors involved with guest speaking over at their facilities, or even teaching lesson plans over at their facilities. So just start to build those relationships. You got to get out there and knock on those doors.
Mhm. Great.
And I wonder, just following what you just said, Will, is I wonder with a number of those community organizations you're working with, whether they work with populations, how they address some of these basic skills needs we've been talking about: English language, math, digital literacy, high school completion. I'm sure they show up with those needs, right?
Yeah, that's a whole purpose of the organization, right?
Yeah.
They're working with a certain population that's been historically kept out of these kind of opportunities. And so, you know, when they come knocking on our door, I'm more than willing to, you know, form a strong partnership with them, because we need that population in our system. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that we're involved.
Great.
Did you see Anthony with his hand up?
Yeah, I see Anthony has his hand up. I want to encourage, we're gonna take Anthony's question. We have 7 minutes or so left for Q&A. Really open to any questions for the panelists. Also any questions, if you can think back to the toolkit, if any questions came up during that presentation, realize we didn't really pause for questions then. So feel free to put in the chat, or Anthony, we're ready to hear your question.
So in answer to my background, that's one of the programs that we have in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and National Park Service. We have a wildland fire program, which is a whole different discussion. But we and my partner in crime is on this call too, are in a small school district. We have a whopping 2 FTEs in our entire adult ed program. And so we are stretched to the nth degree. We're in a rural community, about an hour north of Fresno, and we struggle with not only advertising, but getting the buy-in of I don't know if I want to say the community. We have a huge need, but because we're such a small area, transportation is such a huge issue. And it is the Achilles heel of everything we do. We are an economically depressed area, and it's not uncommon for us to have students that are literally choosing food over putting gas in their car. I hear about LA Unified. I hear about Will's program, etc. Is there anyone on this call or any suggestions of how to leverage small communities? We do have a partnership with the Laborers Union, the Northern California Training Center. We've done 2 pre-apprentice programs. We want to continue to build that, but our population are, we'll just say, not college bound. They're more labor market and union driven. So any secrets to success of how to leverage our community and our partnerships to do the right things.
Any thoughts on our panel?
Well,
Anthony, I hear specifically you're concerned about transportation. Oh yeah, go ahead, Matthew.
Oh yeah, thanks, Jenny. Thank you, Anthony, for sharing. Awesome background. Great to hear about those programs. You know, like you mentioned, LAUSD is very big, so that there's maybe a different context. But one of the things that we've been doing recently that's had some kind of an impact and maybe something that can be replicated at any scale is working very closely with our local school district to promote apprenticeship and to promote CTE programs after high school. We have a lot of high school discussion about college and career readiness or college and career pathways, but we don't often have a lot of support for the building of those career pathways. But we've brought that into kind of the conversation more intentionally and then framed it around equity a lot. And we've had some success in terms of high schools really wanting to hear about, pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship programs, and then counselors referring their students to our programs. And I think, having the support of a local school district, K-12 school district, can maybe help as a leverage point, no matter what the size of the community is.
Thanks, Matthew. That's great.
And we are part of the school district, and we are truly, truly blessed to have a superintendent that not only can spell CTE, but actually knows what all three letters are for. We have a board of trustees that believes in CTE. So as I said, we're very blessed, and Kathy and I could not do the things that we do without their support. It's getting people, the transportation is a huge thing. We have our district covers over 500 square miles. So getting a person from one little community to another is a real challenge. And my webinar last night was talking about regional transportation planning. But I really appreciate your kind words, Matthew, and both Will and Matthew will be getting phone calls from Yosemite Adult School, and we will leverage your expertise to the state's success.
Thanks, Anthony. So I see we have some posts in the chat from Chanel. Thanks, Chanel, for posting the California Apprenticeship Opportunity open right now, and also a link to the toolkit. We're going to turn it over to the Apprenticeship Support Network team in just a second, and I think they're going to be able to share a few more things about the resources that are available. But just to wrap up, I think we want to say a huge thank you to our panelists. Really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experiences to this very important audience. We feel our state's adult education capacity and bringing the conversations together about expanding apprenticeship and including adult education. So thank you from our end. And I think I'll turn it over to Chanel now. I know you wanted to make some closing remarks. Chanel,
Yeah.
Nicole.
Well, I'll pass it to Nicole and also call out in the chat. We have a evaluation. So please, before you jump off or transition, please make sure that you do the evaluation. Thank you all. And I will now pass it to Nicole to close us out.
Awesome. Thanks, Chanel. Thank you so much to our wonderful moderators and panelists for this thoughtful and comprehensive presentation and for leading us in this great discussion. And thank you, all of our participants today, for all of your great questions and engagement. Before we say goodbye, we want to mention a few upcoming points of engagement and next steps. The toolkit and webinar will be shared on the CAPE website. You can also access the toolkit and workbook by visiting the link in the chat. We hope you have enjoyed today's webinar. We are always looking for ways to improve our events and discuss topics of interest to our field. This information helps to make sure the content we are providing is the most relevant for you all. Also, we want to make sure you are plugged into future happenings and get connected with other members of the apprenticeship ecosystem. Please feel free to email our team if you would like to receive future communications regarding our work and getting connected to our apprenticeship community of practice. We want to thank our presenters for joining us and sharing your knowledge, as well as the ASN team for hosting this webinar. And most importantly, we want to thank you all for taking the time to join us, be curious, ask questions, and connect. Until next time, stay safe, stay connected, and stay in the community. Thank you.
And if you'd like to go to the next slide, Holly, we have shared some contact information there. Thank you so much, Matthew, for putting your contact info in the chat. I'm realizing now, I'm sorry I didn't ask our panelists if we could include your contact info here in the presentation, but if you would like to share share anything in the chat, that's an opportunity there. And definitely we welcome your further comments, reactions, questions. Really encourage you to connect with the Apprenticeship Support Network and their community of practice. I see the link in the chat box also for that community of practice. So happy to welcome any adult educators into the large and growing apprenticeship community.
Thank you all. It was great.
Okay, and with that, I think that I will grab, if that's okay with you guys, and close us out. I want to thank Jenny, Peter, Chanel, Nicole, and of course the panelists, Matthew, Holly, and Will. Thank you so much for everything. This was a great presentation, great turnout, lots of thought-provoking discussion going on. Remember, the resources can be found for this session. If you click on the agenda, you go to day 1, you scroll down to this session where you clicked join. That is where you will find right below the abstract of their description, you will find the resources. It also will be uploaded into the resources tab from the lobby that you can then add to your swag bag and email to yourself for keeping. If you need anything else, please feel free to come off mic really quick and grab the attention. We have less than 1 minute left if there's anything urgent to deal with. Okay, with that, I think that we are good. I think that ends our presentation. Thank you so much, team, for coming on and giving us this presentation. We truly appreciate your expertise and your time.
Much appreciated.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right, have a great day, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.